If you have to liquidate a property or an asset, it can actually set you back quite a lot of time. Hi there, Salena Kulkarni with another episode of the Freedom Warrior podcast. Each week I share with you the strategies, expert interviews, and real people's stories around the topic of wealth and financial freedom. On this episode, what I want to do is unpack for you a concept that I call future clarity. In my opinion, it is a concept which so many investors are getting wrong, and I feel is actually sabotaging their efforts towards creating wealth. Now, for those of you who'd like to learn more about financial freedom through alternative methods, please head over to my website, freedomwarrior.com.au, where you can access my library of articles, interviews, and programs to help you on your way to becoming more financially free. Now let's get on with the show. So what I really want to do today is I want to unpack this concept that I call future clarity. From my point of view, if you are not absolutely crystal clear about your vision for the future when it comes to your wealth, it becomes very difficult. It's almost like walking through cement when it comes to deciding which actions, investments, thinking, mindset are going to align with that and which ones do not. I have to admit up front, I'm not a particularly strong person around the concept of goal setting, but I understand the value of vision. If you think about it from a yogic perspective, what you focus on is what expands. Where energy goes, there's expansion. So this is a pretty simple idea, and it's been given lots of different names, but the essence of it is when you focus in on what it is that you want, you start to see lots of the same sorts of opportunities. I give you the best example for this is you want to go out and you want to buy a green Mini, and suddenly you start seeing green Minis everywhere because it's now part of our awareness. If we're not giving shape and clarity to the investment decisions that we make, the actions that we take, the people that we surround ourselves with, it becomes very hard to actually get the result that we want in the shortest possible time. And that's really the end game I think that a lot of investors should be having in the back of their mind is it's not just about achieving the wealth that you want or the financial freedom that you want. It's about getting there with the highest degree of efficiency and effectiveness. So what I want to do today is pull apart what future clarity actually is and how you can implement it in your life. And you'll immediately see how people will accidentally derail themselves and derail their efforts simply by not having one of these pieces properly mapped out. So let me start with what I think the challenges are. If I think about the challenges that we face as investors, the first one is this concept of minimum effective dose. So when we do not understand the minimum effective dose, it makes it very hard to decide how much energy to put towards our investing. So just to clarify, when I talk about minimum effective dose, it's simply a reference to what is the minimum amount of money and effort that we would need to put into our investing to produce the desired outcome. For the majority of people, they don't know what that means for them. So they either under or overdo it. What that means is they pump harder than they need to. They starve their lifestyle in order to put money into their investing, or the opposite, which is they execute investment decisions really slowly or don't put enough of their premium income into their investing. So they either overshoot or fall short. The next challenge that I see a lot of investors face is this idea of flying blind. They don't have a clear vision for what the future looks like, so they don't make informed decisions. And one of the best quotes that I've heard to, describe this is a quote by a guy called Bill Copeland, who said, "The trouble with not having goals is that you can spend your life running up and down the field and never score." And the same is true of wealth. I've worked with many people who are just on an endless treadmill to kind of, increase their net worth or increase their passive income, but they're not really sure why, or they're not really sure what the end game is. And then the third problem is that a lot of investors have no compass, meaning they don't really know the direction that they're trying to move towards. Is it that they're trying to build capital assets? Is it that they're trying to build a certain style of passive income? They don't really know. And so often they can get distracted by opportunities that come along because they're not very clear about where they want to be. And the ultimate price that you pay as an investor when you don't have those things in play is that you end up being in a situation where you're hoping and praying that the decisions that you've made will get you where you want to go. And to be perfectly frank, I was in that position myself years ago, and it doesn't feel good. You're putting all this energy into your investing, and you really aren't sure if you're going to get where you want to go. But what I want to share with you today is, what life could be like if you get this piece right. First of all, you have the capacity, if you get this piece right, to be really precise about exactly how much money and energy and thought needs to go into your investing. Not too much, not too little, but exactly the right amount. You can have crystal clear vision about the future and what it needs to be like in order for you to feel like you've achieved exactly what you want. I guess what that allows you to do is you can start to discriminate. You can figure out what investments are actually going to get you to where you want to go and which ones are simply a distraction. Because ultimately, I think what we're all searching for as investors is confidence. We want to understand that if we go to the effort of taking $1 out of our pocket today, that there is a direct correlation between that and the outcomes that we achieve tomorrow. So what I'm really wanting to do is, break down for you the key elements, the 4 key elements that I think are required in order to build a super clear roadmap for yourself, which should form the basis for any investing plan that you create, not only for the next year, but for the next year and beyond. If I'm really frank, one of the things that is going to set you apart from all the other investors out there who are floundering with their actions is this concept that I'm talking about, which is future clarity. It's about being concrete about the exact amount of income and capital you're going to need in the future to create the lifestyle that you want and the associated timeline that goes with that. The reason for this is that I believe being an investor is about playing the long game. And where I see people having the most success is when they know what they want, because it drives their decision making, and they end up with significantly more amplified results than people who do not have that clarity. So the first piece of the puzzle for me is this concept that I'm calling timeline. So imagine if you were to draw a straight line where on the left, it's a horizontal line, on the left is today, and on the right is some predetermined point in time in the future. You need to be crystal clear about the time frame over which you want to achieve results, so that when you build your business investing plan, it's clear to you that you need to get certain annual results in order to achieve that outcome. For some people, they are perfectly content with the idea that they will achieve financial freedom or some semblance of that by the age of 65. For other people, that just doesn't cut the mustard. There's a huge group of business owners and people out there who want to enjoy the fruits of their wealth well before retirement age. They want to be young enough to enjoy it. So the timeline that you select has to be crystal clear. So that's really the first piece. Now, the second piece that I want to talk about is really being crystal clear around the aspiration. And what I mean when I talk about aspirations is taking all the thoughts and feelings that you might have about what your life looks like at that point in the future and translating them into a concrete figure. I think one of the things that often comes up in conversation when I'm talking to investors about, their dreams for the future is it's feelings and activities and, fairly loose ideas. And, the more fuzzy your ideas, the harder it is to, get really granular about the actions that you're going to need to take. So, I talk about this idea of a formula a lot. It's about saying what conditions need to be present for you to be absolutely clear that financial freedom has been achieved. Instead of it being this kind of like rainbow or pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that every time you get close, it just sort of extends out into the future. So it's not about how you'll spend your time. Like on a Monday, I'll play golf and, I'll spend more time with my kids and I'll, have time to do community work. It's not about those things. Those things are important, believe me. And I would encourage you to describe and articulate that in order to, put meat on the bones of what's important. But the skeleton concept of aspirations is to say what minimum three conditions would need to be present for me to categorically say that I'm financially free. So it's an A plus B plus C sort of things equals financial freedom. Now, everyone is so unique, and part of your journey as an investor is to uncover what conditions are appropriate for you. So, for example, it could be when my house is paid off, when my children's, university money is put aside, when I have X amount of passive income, when I have X amount of capital. When those things are present, then financial freedom is true. So aspirations is it's about understanding that, you need to not be fuzzy about, what you want the end game to look like. Because once those three conditions are in place, it's effectively for you've hit that goal and it's game over. If I move on now to the third component of what's critical for defining future clarity, it's this concept of milestones. Now, milestones are a recognition of the idea that you don't make money in a vacuum. You don't build wealth in a vacuum. Life happens, and there are going to be a number of things that happen along that timeline which are going to have a monetary impact on either your capacity to build wealth or that you're going to need to set aside money for because they are important to you and your world. There are some big ticket items that with a relative degree of certainty are going to happen. So it's much better that you roll those into your plan. Preempting them, mapping them into your business investment plan means that there's no financial stress when they arrive. I know I talk to a lot of people who express pain around the idea of certain financial big ticket items hitting them. And even though they sort of intuitively knew that they were going to happen, they just hadn't planned for them. And so those funds were not set aside or earmarked, or they weren't rolled into the investing plan. And so, if you have to liquidate a property or an asset or put a big hole in some particular element of your plan simply because you didn't have it mapped into your plan, it can actually set you back quite a lot of time. So this concept of milestones is really saying, yes, it's important to me for those things to happen, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the front foot. Some examples of this are things such as sabbaticals. You might have it in your mind that at some point you're going to take 6 months out. Maybe it's a spouse or a partner that is going to take a block of time off work, and so therefore that income won't be available. Maybe it's the need to support your children with, a purchase of an investment property for them or their own home, or simply that at some point in the future you anticipate having to support a parent. Whatever those things look like, I highly encourage that you, to some degree, you're self-insuring by making sure they're rolled into your plan. So the final piece that I want to really talk about is what I call the baseline. And this is really the cornerstone of creating your business investment plan. This is about really having a detailed understanding of the true cost of your life today and making sure you're real about this. It's about examining your relative capacity to invest and your ability to achieve goals. It's about identifying areas of the way that you handle money that requires tweaking in order to perhaps create more surplus or, maybe bring a little more oxygen into your day-to-day lifestyle. Maybe you've been starving it too much. One of the exercises that I go through with most people when I start working with them is, tell me a little bit about your capacity to set aside, dividends or funds or surplus to fuel your investing activities. Because I strongly believe if you've got a high income, that's certainly a gift. Our income really is the fuel that we can add to the fire to make it go faster. But the question I ask is, well, tell me how much you think you can put aside consistently on a monthly basis. And so I get given a number. This is what we invest or put aside for investing. And then I ask them to tell me a little bit about your day-to-day spending. What are you spending your money on? And we go through a fairly detailed analysis of, what are all the big ticket items? What do you think you spend on entertainment and discretionary items? And what do you spend on non-discretionary items? And we map that all out. And, then I marry that up against the income that they know they have. And I say, well, theoretically, based on what you're telling me that you spend, you should be saving at, this particular rate. The rate that you're actually saving at is significantly lower than that. So there's something wrong, as in those two numbers don't reconcile. So what it's really trying to highlight is, if you tell me, and I'm just throwing around some examples, if you say to me, oh, Salena, I can save $1,000 a month, and that's what actually goes into my savings account each month. And then on the other side, if you tell me your living expenses and it projects that you have the capacity to save at $3,000 a month, there's clearly a discrepancy there that needs to be, worked out. Is it that there's an expense item that you've forgotten? Is it that you are maybe just having a lot of ad hoc expenses from time to time, which is just eroding that capacity? Whatever it is, there's no right or wrong. And always remember with all of this stuff, it's not about judging yourself or your actions or having anybody else judge your actions. It's about really strengthening your stewardship so that you can be a more effective investor. And certainly from the viewpoint of legacy, I think one of the cornerstones is being able to teach others, teach your kids, teach your family, teach your friends, teach your community how to look after money. Because if I can tell you now, if people understood the fundamentals of stewardship and money management, if they understood the concepts around the key elements for building great future clarity, I think we would be significantly healthier as a nation when it comes to economics. So anyway, those are the four components: timeline, aspirations, milestones, and baseline. If you can get those four elements right and even use those as the foundation for building out your broader investment business plan, you are going to put yourself streets ahead of most other investors who really flounder and maybe give a bit of lip service to the idea of taking actions which align with their goals and plans and dreams. So guys, I just want to say, the concept of future clarity is really about asking you to shine the torch on what it is you actually want in the future. If you can be super concrete about that, the probability of you reaching that, in my opinion, after having worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, is that you are far more likely to hit those goals than really just having fuzzy, loose ideas for what can be achieved in the future. Thanks for listening to the Freedom Warrior podcast. First of all, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to avoid missing out on future episodes. If you're interested in fast tracking towards being financially free, go to freedomwarrior.com.au, get in touch, and look forward to catching up with you next time. Take care.